everyone.
Hi.
Welcome. Super exciting to have you here. My name is Doc Martens. I am a Director of Communications and Special Projects at the Design Features Initiative. And today I'll be moderating this wonderful panel on storytelling in the metaverse. I'm going to start off by just introducing our awesome panelists, giving them a chance to tell you a little bit about themselves. And then we'll jump into some really fun, far-ranging questions, conversations about the metaverse. We're really excited to talk with you today. So, Dirk, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on this virtual panel. I hope next time we can be, in person again. I'm right now here based in San Francisco Bay Area. Originally, I'm from Germany, and my background is I'm an entrepreneur. I was also very heavily involved in media. I co-founded once the Financial Times in Germany, and then started 3 other companies. And most recently, I started Upland, which you see here. We love llamas. Upland, and we come to the definitions later, is actually one, applications of the metaverse, which is based on the real world. So we originally got inspired by the game of Monopoly. And what you can do today is, we get a small map application. You can use iOS and Android. And you can purchase virtual properties there, and then we have lots of game engagement points. We have treasure hunts. You can complete a collection, and many things. But what was very special is that we are based on blockchain technology. That means also we have the one component besides play, what we call earn. Earn means people are able to eventually, take out monetary value also, and not just the entertainment value, which is quite new. And, you can sell what is called NFTs, which is a hot word or buzzword these days. You can sell NFTs for US dollars for that. So that's the earn component. And then we have the last one is because we believe that Metaverse, of course, is a very social place. So we have play, earn, and then connect. Currently, we have a very strong and very engaged community on, Discord and this Telegram and other channels. But going forward, we're going to have, virtual coffee shops where people can meet, but it's somehow connected to the real world. And we're going to innovate, starting next year on this connect pillar quite a lot.
Yeah, and I actually just tried the application because here in New York, it's actually mintable, right? It's one of the mintable cities. So I was able to go through and see the addresses. So it was very cool.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're currently live, and you don't have to be in the cities. And I'm going to speak a little bit later to virtual locality, what that means. But
hello?
Oh. I think we may have lost him. That's interesting.
No. Oh,
there.
I'm back. I don't know. That was
meta. Made it into the metaverse. It was the meta.
There was an old friend Meta who always sneaks in. So no, I'm saying what I was saying is that we are live in several cities in the U.S. like San Francisco, New York, Cleveland, Chicago. We're bringing real world brands in. You can take a hyperloop between Cleveland and Chicago. You can take planes and so. But you don't have to be in those cities to play, which is very important.
Cool. And how about you, Eva? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Eva Heyning. I have been a producer across metaverse spaces since 2004. I have been a world builder, producer, strategist. I'm CEO of a team at Playable Agency, and I also co-chair the Open Metaverse Interoperability community, which is specifically looking at how all of these planets and solar systems fold up into something bigger, into the metaverse, and how will we transfer our assets? How are we sharing with each other in that space? And how can we really work together and collaborate together effectively? So I love the AR side, the virtual world side. I love creating, and especially creating spaces for others to work together effectively.
Mm-hmm. I'm really excited. We're going to talk a little bit later about interoperability and all these metaverses, which is one of my favorite topics. And we were actually just, geeking out a little bit about before we came in to speak with you all. But before we get started, quickly, I'm Doc Martens, Director of Communication Special Projects at the Design Features Initiative by night, UX designer at Teach for America by day. What that means is I run our communications across all of our speculative futures meetups. We have around 60 around the world for people who are interested in getting together and talking about and collaborating on preferable futures. I also co-facilitate our Futures by Design workshop, which is like an introduction to using speculative futuring to really think through your organizations or your personal practice and to be able to, understand what the modes and mindsets are to move into that world. And we just released our guide on our website, futures.design. So definitely check that out if you're interested in learning more about world building. And some of the other things I think we'll really talk about today is essential skills as we start to navigate and to build metaverses together. So that's my spiel. I'm going to get right into it. And so the first thing I want to talk about is, when we say the metaverse, it could mean a lot of different things, right? So the term was coined 1992. Neil Stephenson in his Snow Crash novel says, the metaverse, it's this massive shared VR environment that's accessible through, I'm probably some sort of cyber deck, right? Because this is before anyone knew smartphones would end up being the computers we would have, right? But today it seems like maybe it's taken on different meanings for different people or organizations. So when you hear the term metaverse, what do you think of and how might you define it? And maybe are there any shared characteristics of metaverse? And I'll start, Ivo, with you.
I picture the entirety of the digital universe, and that includes the spatial web and how the digital world fits with the physical world, all of the sensors and information that they're sharing. That includes augmented reality. Mm-hmm. And that includes all of those layers that we are not just getting on our mobile phones, but eventually in smart glasses and other interfaces as well. When we did the Metaverse roadmap in 2005, what was included was mirror worlds, which have become something more like digital twins. And digital twins have become extremely important toward the future of engineering, IoT, how our systems fit together, and how we communicate at the sort of level of individual machines, as well as the larger meta structures. So I include things like live streaming, Twitch, the media side, the secondary layers of the metaverse experience, because that is also how we participate with the metaverse, right? Not everyone is going to go into VR, but we tend to participate in these digital worlds together in a number of different sort of nested ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually, one thing Dirk and I were speaking about in prep for this earlier was that I had an experience where I was playing Final Fantasy 14. We were listening to a live stream of a DJ on Twitch, dancing with our characters in the game, but also on Discord, connected to one another, speaking over headphone. And we were, saying how it's interesting that, these three different applications combine to provide that sense of community and immersion, because that's sort of where we are right now.
Right. We don't have true interoperability or a true metaverse yet. And Dirk, you're creating something like that, right?
Yes, we are. But yeah, I think, and I can come to that topic, how all those things interact together. And I completely agree, right? We have in a certain way, we have the metaverse already here, right? That means meta, when we look it up, means beyond, right? Or something. I always relate it could also say data, right? Because it says dataverse, because people do something, in an electronic way, somehow different. It's just not the physical world. You do it somewhere. And I always believe it's, when we say on one hand it's a parallel world, but it's also a mindset where when you think about it, that people are coming together, they have the same, they share common interests, and beliefs, and they do stuff together. If you take, why do you have countries today, right? Of course, there were wars, previous years, especially in Europe, right? We defined borders, there were languages and all these things, but there's always people, somehow they had, a common thing together, which then defined, the identity. And I think this is when you think about it, I think this is exactly the same thing we're going to see now in the digital realm. That means people have common interest, and we see that, for instance, in Upland also, where people actually group together, even though they're from all around the world, but they're getting together, and it's now funny, in a local virtual place, which in our case is actually also connected to the real world, and then they share whatever they want to do. They might be interested in art, they might be interested in a sports club, or what have you, right? And they're coming together there, and that's something which we will probably see, and I think it has it's going to have a very, very deep society impact, how we all going to, on a global scale, going to be living together. So I think we're just, at the very, very beginning of it. But when it comes to the metaverse, it's important is this whole idea about identity. So what does it mean, identity? Because it's not, I think, in the metaverse, because in real life, normally you have maybe also multiple identities. You go to job, maybe you're a different person than what you do at night, right? And so that's also there. I mean, the only thing is most of the time you stick to your name, right? I tend to say in the real world, in the virtual world, you assume a different name, and then maybe you assume, and then you take different identities, of course. But it's all focused around yourself. You know who you are and who you represent in which part of the metaverse in a different way. And that's what is also very new, that people assume those different kinds of identities.
Yeah, we were actually talking a little bit earlier about, the new show, Alter Ego, which is a new reality TV show where people use mocap suits and perform as their avatars. And we were, talking a little bit about embodiment and sort of how we as humans maybe have many facets and maybe, metaverses in some way, whether it's an AR, mixed reality, or even like a full virtual world, are going to give us license to sort of express those identities in new ways. So, Ivo, how do you think navigating metaverses might open up some opportunities for trying on different identities, or maybe living into different aspects of our own identity, that we can't share today?
Well, you have the concept of plurality, meaning that you can be more than one person. You can choose to embody any number of, something other than yourself. And that can look like something human, non-human, animal, ball of light, anything at all, right? And when you open yourself up to think about your identity at that core level, you discover things about yourself. You discover that, I like myself better when I'm always green. So I'm always going to be green from here on out, right? You might find something about yourself that is true that you didn't realize until you embodied it. And so that's why many people, not just kids and teens, but throughout our lives, we try on different identities. And we explore these things, we experiment, and then we come into communities with other people doing the same. And that's how we find our others, right? So the metaverse is now where we find our others, and it has been for almost 20 years. It's been where niche communities can really thrive and grow. It's the public commons, but it's like the hidden corners of the park, right? It's not necessarily where everyone knows. You got to have like a friend of a friend who tells you to go to that club in that room, and you're going to find the other people who are just like you, or not. I love creating lots of different embodiments, but I also love finding something that is consistent and true across that plurality. Because most people don't want to have just one avatar. Some people do. They want to have one avatar across all the worlds. Other people want to have multiple hats or meat suits that they put on, right? So you can try on meat suits all day long and really like let yourself be free and really open yourself and explore in that way.
I really like that idea of a shared thread, right? Like there's this, I don't know, it's almost like paring away layers until you get to the core of like, this makes me me, and that no matter if I'm a ball of light or if I'm, I don't know, like I'm narwhal, whatever you might want to be, that there's still something uniquely you, maybe your facial expressions or the way you present yourself or something. So I think that's really interesting.
So like on Alter Ego, they're judging them based on how well there seems to be a match between their avatar that's created with an artist. They are not creating the avatar in this case, but that sense of like, did you get something about your personality to come through the avatar? And that's an interesting thing that we've never really explored in public before. And it'll be interesting to see how that sort of opens us up to new ideas of embodiment and who we can be, whether it's on stage or at home when we're playing games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa.
Go ahead, Dirk.
No, we lost.
Oh, okay. No. Now everyone's dipping in today.
Okay. So,
sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think your ego is also defined, of course, in what part of the metaverse you are, and this has several reasons for that. And one reason is purely technical, because if you think about that, when you look what kind of metaverse, we have to discuss what different versions we have out there today. But sometimes it's just a different gameplay, right, or different visual aesthetics, right? So because it's just the way the metaverse application and that particular platform has been designed. Sometimes you look like a voxel graphic, and sometimes some of the metaverse applications, they're trying to to look you as human as possible. Yeah, so that's the first thing. The second thing is then the context you're in that metaverse, right? Maybe in that one metaverse you become, let's say, a car racer, right? And then you decide, okay, I want to look like, I don't know what a car racer typically look like, but just that's the idea. And on the other hand, then maybe another metaverse, maybe you do something completely something which is completely contrary to that. Maybe you're conserving the environment, and you're an activist, and then all of a sudden you look again different. So I think, and that's what is so interesting, and that's what I think what will always come down is, because people, it's going to be hard to always come up with new characters for yourself, right? I think at the end, that is my hunch at this, is that people will actually always circle around their core identity in a certain way, right? So maybe the two examples what I just used, they're maybe too extreme, right? Someone who is a car racer might be a motorcycle racer or something else. So to draw that, right? Because otherwise it's just too complex for you to manage all the different identities as such, and you don't have so much time to do all that.
Right. And it's important to give people some consistency if you're leading or a part of communities where you're building relationships over time. So if you're constantly changing avatar personas, that can be difficult for relationship building. And on the converse, like if you're trying to build yourself as a VTuber or celebrity, there is this sense of needing to embody something consistent enough that people can always recognize you and always feel that sense of connection. My avatar in Second Life was a VTuber, a YouTuber going back to 2006. And when I would go to conferences, people would go and like yell my avatar name. Like they recognized me as my avatar, not as my human. And that created some level of almost dysphoria for me. It especially created dysphoria when I lost that avatar and couldn't get her back, right? And so we become so attached to these alternate identities or personas that they shape who we are. And that's where interoperability matters as well, because we don't want to necessarily lose something once we've given 5, 7, 10 years of our creative lives to it.
Yeah. I think actually, go ahead, Dirk.
No, just one short sentence to that. What will be interesting to watch right now, we are reproducing our identity or what we want to be into the metaverse. But I also see that like in the future, right, they're assuming some kind of identity, and that will also go back to the real life. So something I've done there and I've experienced, now I'm changing also my personality in a certain way in real life. But so, yeah.
I mean, if I could dress like my character in Cyberpunk 2077 all the time in real life, like if that was my fashion, just like go-to closet, like I'd be down. I've been trying to push fashion armor for a while, but I feel you. Like there's definitely, I think it'd be interesting if I looked at avatars I've created over time in various video games. What are some of the commonalities and what are some of the differences, especially really more recently as character creation gets better. I always RPG specifically as a male-bodied person in the past because of like the ways video games were designed, right? Like the armor was like, I've got like chainmail on my elbow, right? For a lot of the female avatars. But now today, there's a lot more range, and I found myself gravitating and being like, actually, like, you go either way, and there's a lot of interesting things people have been doing there. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit now is just about, specifically about storytelling. And I think, when we were talking about different identities and how you might sort of have this continuous thread, a lot of people think that maybe in MMORPGs or in metaverses that are gaming based, right, that there's this like idea of loot, and that they're very loot oriented. You're going and you're sort of collecting material things, and you're changing your armor maybe, or you're getting a cool haircut, but it's very sort of accumulatory, right? And so what I would like to talk about is like, maybe there's some other opportunities that are unique for storytelling in the metaverse. around collaboration, around communities, and I think interoperability might be part of it. How do you take those things with you across to different metaverses, right? And sort of what does that mean when you have very different stories being told? I'll start with you, Dirk.
Yeah. So first of all, I think let's take a look at what the metaverse really is when you compare it, when you say Web 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. Right? 1.0 was basically the plain HTML web. Then 2.0 was the social web with Facebook and so on. Now 3.0, which is what was called the metaverse, connection also with especially with blockchain technology. So what is now different is that people, when we said assuming identity, but what is now different, instead of just watching in a passive mode, a stream, of your news feed and looking at videos, now you become an active player. You do something in the metaverse. So that means also because you do something, you're creating much more content around. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I think news will be, because of that there will be news coming out of the metaverse, which we will see in the future that, some scandal, some good things, some bad things, whatever, all that is going to happen. But what is now different is that the news will also be generated by the decentralized communities. What I mean with that is that people will take, existing things, remix it. We've seen that in YouTube and others, right? And they take, they're going to sample it, they're going to put it together, and then, so that's what we've already seen in YouTube, right? When I was a big Game of Thrones fans, right? I see all those videos who really dived into things. But what is now different, what is the additional layer on top of it? People will remix, sample, and they will play something, a mini game in the metaverse, or they do something, and then there's a result out of that game. Let's stick back to, they maybe raced a car, maybe they did a car race with celebrities in there, just to grab a very concrete example, right? And then there was something happened, so he was faster than Elon Musk, or whatever, right? Something along those lines. And then we're taking some of the, some components, some samples of something else, and this generates completely news, right? And this is done then by this one particular player. But when you are now a storyteller, right, you have maybe to follow that player to, maybe interact with him directly. And somehow you become also, you as the storyteller yourself, you become part of the story. So which is very new. So I clearly see that, when you compare it in the old world, you as the storyteller, you have to somehow orchestrate that in a certain way, right? When you're somehow the conductor, right? So you have a, in the old world, you had one solo player on the stage and was playing, and then he was talking. He was basically the storyteller. Now you have many people on the stage, right? And they're all telling a story. You have to see, okay, who's coming in now, and you orchestrate that together. And sometimes you get people out of the audience onto the stage, and we see that like Clubhouse, you're getting people on the stage, and then you create a new story out of it. So that's something which is, I think, the role of the storyteller will become more of a conductor than going, one to many, and being the one who explains everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it makes me, you just made me think a lot about how I wish I could remember the name of it. In New York, there was this like interactive play that was like a rendition of Sleep No More, right? And you'd go through, and every time you went through it, it would be this whole different experience, right? Because you were working with actors all throughout it. So that made me think, reminded me a lot of what you were saying, but it spread across universes.
Yeah, the virtual world and all of these worlds of gaming learn a lot from immersive theater in terms of interactivity, because when you're inviting interactivity, you're giving people a choice, and that choice can help them discover their own agency. Mm-hmm. That builds collaboration if you design it effectively. And so you're sort of stair-stepping folks. You're kind of giving them the scaffolding from individual connection to individual creativity to collective creativity to becoming a part of a community of creators that are doing something effective together. And you want to give them that on-ramp, because mostly when we go to a metaverse event or something like a concert, it's a one and done kind of thing. We don't necessarily stick around. And the smart metaverse platforms that get you to stick around and create things with other people, those are going to be creating tremendous value over time. So what Dirk is describing, that sort of metaverse media networks and all of the things that can grow from that, that is an extraordinary opportunity space for interactive participatory design,
Yeah.
right? That can be applied to every vertical. That could be certainly done. Let's say you have PBS and the metaverse together, right? That's what needs a DAO. Someone I saw below was asking about where do DAOs fit in. We need decentralized media ownership structures so that we can create effectively together and not have it owned by a single company, right? That's how we bust silos. And it is going to happen through DAOs and other types of initiatives coming together with the vast creativity of millions of people.
Yeah, it's almost like the thinking about these relationships as sandboxes or building blocks. Like I know I own land in Decentraland, and I would be hard pressed. I'm sure I could learn it, but I would be hard pressed to do all the 3D asset design myself. So when they had a somewhat accessible builder and they were putting in new interactive elements and things I could build with, I found I could get really creative. Like I was able to manipulate it enough to like really twist the stuff they put in there into interesting things. But it would have been a lot bigger of a barrier to entry for me if I had to, code all of those pieces myself in another piece of software and do it. So I do think that, that
the WYSIWYG game engine built into the platform. So Roblox Studio, for example, is a great storytelling tool. And we see people taking their story worlds, putting them in Roblox and making these sort of advanced levels of their story, or maybe giving people access to parts of the story world that weren't available before. And I did this with fan culture. I made a Twin Peaks roller coaster theme park in Roblox just because it's fun. Like I want to do intergenerational play and ride roller coasters with my nieces and nephews. So where do I do that? Roblox. It's fun.
Yeah, with Roblox, I opened the app and checked like 3 things out, and then I got very intimidated and left. And I was like, all right, I need to spend some more time in here. I have friends whose kids are like, oh, my kid's like queen of her own world, and people come to it for these like lavish parties, and I'm she hosts all these events, and I was like, and she's 7, like
driven, and you have to kind of, as a parent, you have to think about, okay, do I want to maybe think about other types of experiences and how to shepherd that together? Because otherwise, if you throw your kids into Roblox, it's generally going to be sort of either loot driven or experience driven things.
So but in general, I think that's such a great direction, all the metaverse, like Roblox are going. I think the 2 things, what is because always metaverse always associated with some dystopian view of the future, but it does not have to be like that. And it's up to us as people actually to create that in a certain way. Of course, it becomes dystopian because there's always one bad guy who owns everything. When you looked at Ready Player One or something, who's does something bad, but it's truly decentralized, then hopefully it's not going to be like that. However, completely decentralization always has the risk that things are getting too crazy, and and then people then they're scared of it, right? So that's also where you have to have some people who take somewhere the lead in order to produce at the end better products. So that's the way they look. I cannot really answer at this point, but I think that's just the way it is. But going back to the positive view is, first of all, metaverse enables people to become creative, to compete, because in the real world, we have to face it, we have to compete against machines, and the machines are getting better and better. But what they're not getting better is at creativity. So which is makes it very compelling. So now in the metaverse, you can be so creative, you can create so many new things, and that is the opportunity. We always say the metaverse is the new land of opportunity, right, where people can start doing things. And the other component, which we believe, also at Upland, which is super important, because at Upland we have the vision that we're creating, hundreds, thousands, if not millions of new jobs in the future, but done by entrepreneurs, by decentralized entrepreneurs, is that you can actually also extract monetary value, that you can eventually make money in the game, and that's what blockchain gives, because blockchain has the advantage that you truly own the goods you're creating or that you're purchasing, and you can sell them as you want, and you don't have those restrictions. So things are going to change in the future. That means when you have the examples, like in the when it comes to this true ownership and extracting monetary value, the past, parents would tell their kids, hey, stop playing, because you're wasting all your time. Now things are changing. It's starting out maybe more developing countries, but might come over here as well because it's just a thing of economics. Today, parents say, "Hey, go and play and make sure we have an income for today," right? It's a weird world, but that's where it's going. But it has a lot of positive possibilities here as well.
So much value to unlock there. For those of you who are creators, directors, producers, whether it's theater, TV, film, the Metaverse is a production suite. It is a studio that you can use for anything at all, right? You need to go shoot in outer space, that's possible. You need to do something that blends a game world and a physical world, that's possible. You can shoot those kinds of things even using game engines. And this is where virtual production and Unreal, the filmmaking side, are meeting the Metaverse. And this is already happening, right? The Avatar sequels were basically shot as a Metaverse movie. Volumetric, 500 cameras in the ceiling, every angle captured, and every actor mocapped, so that you're filming, you're shooting a game at the same time. And that sort of all perspective storytelling is going to change the way we tell stories. So I would invite those of you who are creators, directors, producers to just jump into any platform you find interesting and maybe try your hand at creating something new. Maybe it's a gallery show, a theater piece. There's a lot of happening as far as like the Broadway scene has moved into the Metaverse for doing fantastic theater. So I would encourage you to keep experimenting and trying out new things in terms of interactive show design.
So before we get into the Q&A, I just want to finish up with, I think it's that sort of natural evolution of what we've been talking about, which is, actually designing these metaverses, right? Or, design values perhaps for, as we think about different ways to story tell in the metaverse. Someone before mentioned, inclusivity, and what does that bring to the table? So if you, given your experience working in metaverses, what are some maybe, some important things to keep in mind, or some design values or principles that people should be aware of when they're getting into metaverses and thinking about sort of, where to come in for the first time and what to build and for whom?
I can suggest there is a creator author named Monica Bielskiet, and during the pandemic, she created a Protopian Futures framework, a guide to creating protopian futures. And inclusivity is a part of that. And it's also honoring ritual and honoring heritage and understanding deep respect and human kindness and compassion as well. So designing for the worlds we want, not necessarily the worlds we have right now. If you have infinite potential, what do you want to create? And can you create from that perspective, giving other people an opportunity to also add to that, right? Because it is collaborative. It doesn't have to be individual. So I would say go back and anyone check out Monica Bielskiet's Protopian Futures Framework.
I second that. Monica has amazing work. And that's Monica with a K, Monika. I do not remember exactly how to spell her last name, but you can try to put it in the notes later when we have some time during the Q&A. Dirk, what about you? What are some things that maybe you've learned or design values you'd like to see as we move forward and telling stories in the metaverse in the future?
Yeah, first of all, designing values. I think what's very important and we see that also in our community, that everyone helps each other, right? That's where what we see. Let's face it. Today on social networks, unfortunately, there's a lot of negativity and hate, right? And hope we can actually create with the metaverse, something where people actually more live in a positive way together. They're more constructive of doing things. Yeah. So, and that also includes, we should not come in there with prejudice or whatever, right? So everyone who's creative, who wants to contribute, right? And he should be welcomed with open arms. When it comes to storytelling, I think, especially when you get started, right? I think, first of all, listen to all those, go to Discord, see how people actually think. And it's a little bit different what you see today on the social networks, the way they interact. And you try to read between the lines. Why do people, why people communicate? And then try to identify what kind of stories you can create. It depends on, but I would always stick to what when you're a good storyteller about, about daily news, then you should look, into those, into those communities where you find those people who are discussing that, right? But on the other hand, you can find other very niche products, and you should stick to what you know, because it will be somehow be represented also in the metaverse, and then you can, continue with your storytelling with a twist that you actually integrate those people who are talking about it. That's the important thing. Don't say, I'm going top down and telling the story, right? Try to really engage them and integrate them in your story.
Yeah, I really like that, sort of bringing people to the table. I've always found that all the metaverses I participate in today are made much richer because my, friends are there with me. They're friends I've brought with me from real life, or maybe a community I've met, in some other way. So I definitely think that's going to be interesting to see how that evolves, right? And I think that's actually our first question from the audience is, there are some questions about distributed autonomous organizations and understanding, maybe what role they're going to play in the metaverse in the future. And, something I think about a lot is just, governing, right? That, once you have a metaverse running, right, or up, it's not this one-time thing. You have to have a way to govern it. And we look at Facebook just shut down for people the other day, right? All day long. I had someone come out of a hotel and run up to me on the street and be like, is Instagram working? Is Instagram working? And I was like, what? And she was like, I can't get in touch with anyone. My Instagram is down and I'm here visiting and I only have people's contact information on Facebook and Instagram. And I was like, wow, centralization for these centralized ways of interacting with each other can really mess us up if it is just down, if the government shuts it down, if something happens and they decide to boot us. And we've seen this happen a lot in the, in the sex work industry online with FOSTA and SESTA, and when people take content they don't want off. So, that's where I see DAOs a little bit. What about you? Where do you maybe see DAOs maybe empowering people or maybe disempowering people in this space?
I think DAOs is perfect vehicle to do that. I mean, the problem is with DAOs and with internet in general, right? It's still very complicated for the average person to use. I mean, we have to face it, right? It's when you said you're in Decentraland or other platforms, right? It's when you have to set up a private wallet and keys and have to deal with all that, right, in order to participate in those things, then it's going to be, I don't know whether it's going to be really mass market, for usable. So I think that's the first thing we have to overcome. Once this is overcome, then the concept of the DAO is actually the way it should be. And for example, I can give one example what we're doing at Upland. So we're going to have, we have neighborhoods in Upland, and what we want to give is them, I mentioned it before, this virtual locality, that people gather together with certain interests in Upland. But going forward, we want them to govern their own neighborhood. Yeah, so that means they can decide, and I mentioned, what kind of shops they want to operate there, right? What kind of maybe, cultural things, the kind of theaters they want to have there. So that should be left to people in a very decentralized manner, that they can define, that they have this, they have a method to make decisions, to vote for certain things and so on. But it's completely up to them to do it, and it should not be with us, the game operator. It should be really with the people who are there and who want to manage that. But one thing is, somehow society, people always have the tendency to centralize again. So I hope, right, that even though DAO, which is a great concept, right, however, that not in 10 or 15 years we say, okay, that's the same thing, we see the same thing again, certain people, accumulating all the wealth, accumulating all the knowledge, right, and there's only the top 5% decide what the other 95% are doing and so on. That would be actually, I would be quite disappointed if that is going to happen, but we have to provide the tools that actually this hopefully is not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Eva, what do you think?
I think DAOs especially are essential for us to reclaim our value as creators.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, we are the media. We own the media. We create it together. That's what we do. And DAOs give creators an opportunity to grab that value back and then associate it in new ways. Yeah. And there's infinite ways to do that, but it is about taking back fundamental value and recognizing ourselves as the value proposition, mm-hmm. right? And it doesn't matter where we take that. It doesn't matter whether that's a DAO of a small group of people in a small little virtual world, or if that's a DAO of a global media network. These decentralized structures can bust down the barriers and deal with some of the silo problems. They can also get rid of some of the gatekeepers, but if they are not designed properly, they create new gatekeepers. So we have to think about governance carefully when we're designing these kinds of structures, because not everything on the blockchain is just wide open for everyone. And there are lots of different ways in which we design, for example, NFTs or a smart contract to be able to, for example, I want to share my art with Dirk. I can decide exactly how that art can be shared and share it with him. That token now represents our contract, our license around that media, right? So I think we are going to see these massive DAOs that are basically just licensing structures at the end of the day. And that's going to change the way we share media as a whole, and how media networks figure out how they're going to maybe like give people permission to do a little bit more with user-generated content, maybe spin new worlds off of characters or assets. There's so many opportunities. And I think we're just starting to scratch the surface here. We're talking about, you know, markets and art assets, but you can imagine, let's say, in generative work or in massive collaborative work, being able to fractionalize the part of the value that everyone has brought to the table so that everyone can receive the reward, right? Because right now, media doesn't work that way. Media makes sure that a small number at the top generally get paid, and then all the other creators get paid a small amount, but don't necessarily get to participate in the long-term value proposition.
Yeah, it's that really that dichotomy between collaboration and competition, and they've always sort of sat on opposite sides because we haven't had a value structure in place to reward things. Like if you look at blockchain royalty payments, for example, if I create something and you remix it, and then somebody buys that remix, like we can create smart contract structures for everyone to get paid down chain. And what that really does is you're actually looking, I've done some work on this in the past, almost like an evolutionary or a natural approach to sort of how these economics work, and that these things will grow out of these seeds of creativity, right? And branch into these many different remixes and versions, but that, you know, everybody's still connected, you know, along that thread of the idea. And then you're able to sort of reward value along different parts of the idea. So I really love that, you know, that DAOs will sort of mediate that. I think a lot about artisans and guilds and things like that, you know, and sort of how that was taken away with automation, and maybe it's coming back now in a different way. So I think it's going to be interesting.
It affects every aspect of our work. We were talking earlier about my special effects company and my previous work in hardware for film. And you can imagine, like, every prop, every asset becomes something that can be shared, spun off into new things, and then you can begin to do all sorts of layering on top of that experience. So I'm excited to see, someone was asking earlier about how this feeds an open metaverse and not necessarily just closed structures. And obviously, there's a lot of work to do on the communications and infrastructure, and especially on the interoperability side to make that possible. Because right now, I can't necessarily easily take my art and just give it to Dirk and have him make it work in all worlds. It might work in his world, and it might work in my world, but it isn't going to work in all worlds yet. And that's where the next generation of Metaverse is taking us.
But we, just to say, to advertise Upland, but we just launched what we call the Nft Portal. So you will be able to import NFTs and your assets from other platforms into Upland, and you will be able to export them again, right? So we give the freedom to the people. So we already have that only for one blockchain, but we, you know, with some technical challenges to solve. But that's a clear direction, because we're strong believer in this interoperability, right? People should own and then, you know, take it elsewhere if they want to do it, and do something else with it. I think interoperability and decentralization will be the key of the success of the metaverse, which is hopefully created by new companies which are out there, not by the existing ones who have other objectives.
Yeah. All right, so I think we have time for a really quick response to one question, which I think is really important to talk about as, you know, we discuss all of these opportunities, which is that, you know, today it can be really rough for women and people of color and you know, people of all sorts of different backgrounds, ethnicities, gender identities, to be on the internet, especially in social media. So, you know, how do we think that metaverses or DAOs or you know, how could we make sure we ensure this safe space for diversity and inclusivity as we're building them? And, you know, where we can maybe avoid some of this disinformation that we see happening today, and some of, this hate mongering. What's to stop us from creating a metaverse where everyone just goes and, it's like the parlor metaverse, like, what is that going to mean?
Yeah. So I can just say, first of all, one advantage of the metaverse is that people can enter it without any prejudice, right? So if I see the avatar of someone, I don't know who's behind it. So everyone in quotation marks is equal, right? So that's one advantage, right? Which you can have. I mean, now you can ask, oh, is that actually a good thing? But actually, it's a first step, right, to do that. But I think the more important question is, what you do before people enter the metaverse. Does everyone has the same equal chance to actually get into it? Because obviously you need to have high tech in order to do that, and have high bandwidth, and all that access, right? I think that's something the metaverse cannot directly solve unless the metaverse says we're getting communities together, and then we're trying to collect the funds which we have and bring that back to the real world, so we can include more people who are maybe don't have the chance to enter as easy, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the only way I see it, and to support it. Hopefully, people. But otherwise, that's somehow there's a gap which we have to overcome. I clearly see that. Right?
Absolutely, and part of that is also not just going toward those silos that we've heard about, the Roblox, the Fortnites, the Facebook Oculus of the world. There is a vast metaverse of experiences in WebXR, in the open web, that are communities, that are experiences, that are theater, art, every type of experience that is available to everyone who can get on a browser with a semi-reasonable computer. You can do things like Mozilla Hubs in a mobile phone, on an iPad. These things don't necessarily have to be high barrier to entry or a big, heavy download. Mm-hmm. And so figuring out how you can take those sort of web-based WebXR experiences into classrooms, hospitals, places where the public can actually interact with them. That reduces the barrier to entry. It gives people that sort of time to walk across the street with a friend and hold their hand, because usually the first couple of times when people jump into any sort of 3D web or metaverse experience, it's nice to do it with a friend, to have someone to hold your hand, to be there with you. You don't want to go in alone. It's often, these places can feel a little overwhelming, and some metaverse platforms do have hate crime problems, right? So queer slurs in VR chat are pretty common. There are certain types of things that you may encounter. I have a female voice, but I usually will play a non-binary avatar in order to sort of reduce that tension, because I don't want to be sexualized as my avatar. Everyone makes their own choices around that, and that helps to sort of remove the noise. But each person has to decide how they're going to navigate around those noisy factors, because it is like a big public park where everything can happen.
Yeah. I think that's an awesome place to end. Thank you, Ivo. Thank you, Dirk. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work after this panel? Ivo, where can they find you on the interwebs?
I'm at Amoration and Playable Agency on the socials, and you can join us at Open Metaverse Interoperability Group, which is omigroup.org. We'd love to have you participate.
Awesome. And Dirk, where can people find you?
I'm as operator not allowed to play Upland myself. This is a distant story, but you can find me on www.upland.me. That's our website, and you can find me on Twitter /Dirk Lueth. That's my name, and you can find me and connect with me.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at Dana Rose Martens, and everywhere else as Doc Martens. So thank you, everyone. We will drop it in the chat as we're leaving. Thank you again, everyone, and
enjoy the rest of the conference. I look forward to seeing some of the awesome panels events coming up. Bye, everyone. Yes, look forward to your questions.
Thank you. It's fun.
Bye, everyone. Hope you guys could just drop your beats in the chat before we leave, I guess.